Now, Alex Salmond has been campaigning for Scottish independence for decades. In the 1992 general election, cast your mind back, he did famously promise Scotland would be free by 93. 17 years later, and the leaders of the SNP and Scotland's First Minister, indeed, has this morning been outlining his plan for a referendum on independence. There is one big problem for him, though. He doesn't have a majority in the Scottish Parliament. Isn't stopping him. He says he's determined to give the Scottish people a say.
The government will bring forward that referendum bill early in the new year. That will lay out the detailed framework for holding a referendum, and that referendum will allow the voice of the people to be heard on the future of their country. There could be no more important declaration for the future of Scotland in this Scotland's National Day.
Well, the leader of the Conservatives in Scotland, Annabel Goldie, has just been giving her reaction to the White Paper proposals.
Look, at the moment, Scotland, by repeated opinion poll, is not interested in independence. Indeed, support for it is falling. It's an appalling waste of public money for Alex Salmond to press ahead with a bill which is going to fail. I think this is reflective of failing judgment on Alex Salmond's part. Well,
I'm delighted to say we can now speak live to Scotland's First Minister, the leader of the SNP, Alex Salmond. Thank you very much for speaking to us. I mean, it must be a very busy St Andrew's Day for you. Can I just, first of all, just raise...
Happy St Andrew's Day.
Happy St Andrew's Day to you too. You might or might not have heard, Boris Johnson was on just a few minutes ago on this programme, and he said, you know, Scotland would actually do a lot better if a lot more money was diverted to London. You would benefit. I mean, is that something you'd like to endorse on this programme?
Well, I hope that there's not very many of them, person thinking about voting Conservative in Scotland has heard this latest declaration for the Conservatives that we must give more money to London, in addition to the £230,000 million of oil revenues that's gone over the last 25 years, in order to help Boris Johnson and no doubt David Cameron in their election plans. I think that's going to diminish considerably the ever-diminishing Conservative support in Scotland.
Right, OK. Well, I didn't expect to hear anything different. Let's talk about the question of referendum now, Alex Salmond. So, first of all, am I right in saying what you are going to do, and we're going to get the form of words at some point in the future, is you're going to ask for the right to go and negotiate for independence, but you're not actually going to come back and tell the people of Scotland, look, this is what we're going to negotiate. Do you like it or not?
Well, we think you should decide referendum on principle. This, after all, is what we did in 1997 in Scotland, where the referendum was held in principle before the legislation setting up the Scots Parliament. So there's nothing new in this. We think the referendum should be held on the principle, and then the politicians should get on with doing what the people have indicated they want. Remember, any referendum in the United Kingdom, anyone that's ever been held anywhere, any time, on any subject, is always consultative. It's not binding, it's consultative for the people. That applies to the European referendums, it will apply to the referendum on Scottish independence or extending the powers of the Parliament. The important thing is that the people of Scotland should have their say. That is the fundamental point.
Yes, but they should have their say, surely, on something that they know the shape and form of. I mean, arguably, we understood devolution. It was much more out in the open. Now, in this case, you know, people might say, yes, you know, go ahead and find out what you can get, go and see what you can negotiate, and then let us decide. Tell us what the debts are that Scotland is going to have to shoulder. Tell us what the shape of our finances will be. Tell us what we'll have to shoulder alone, and then we'll say yes or no. But you're not saying that.
Well, that's why we've published 176 pages of enormous detail today, more detail than's ever been published in Scottish history, exactly so people know what the proposition is. I mean, actually, people know what the proposition is in independence. That's what's been published. They know what no change means, no change from the current powers. We need a bit more detail, and if there is another option, if there is an option to extend the powers of the Parliament short of independence, I mean, these are the areas where we actually need more detail. The detail on independence is there. Everybody understands what no change is, and most people don't want it. The more detail we need is actually on the ability to extend powers, but short of independence. It's one of the reasons I favour the independence option.
So when are we going to know the exact question that you're going to be asking? And actually, the big question everyone wants to know, when is this referendum going to happen?
Well, we're publishing the referendum bill early in the new year. We've left that flexible because we're trying to get support of one of the other parties. We have the support of the Greens, but we need the support of one of the other parties in the Scots Parliament. They don't seem willing to give it at the present moment, and therefore we're being flexible to try and find a formula that they can support. The only thing that's a sine qua non for us, the only thing that's absolutely necessary is to have independence on the ballot paper. And as for timing, then we believe the referendum should be held at this time next year.
Yeah, I mean,
but even there, if there was a month or two either way, we'd be pretty flexible in that as well.
Yeah.
But as you know, I'm an incredibly flexible person. All that matters to me is the principle of allowing the people of Scotland the right to have a say in their own country's future. What could be fairer than that?
Yes, I mean, it's also quite helpful to have a little more time, isn't it? Our good friend, Andrew's just come back from Scotland. The papers are full of editorials saying, do you know what, stop worrying about theoreticals. We've got jobs issues here, we've got economic crisis here, we've got things that really need your urgent attention. Isn't it about time you stopped fiddling around with theoreticals and actually dealt with what the problems are here and now?
Well, fighting recession, of course, is a huge concentration of the Scottish Government, but as we've pointed out today in fairly dramatic detail, probably the single biggest obstacle in terms of fighting recession is our inability within the Scottish Government and Parliament's current powers to bring forward capital spending, shovel-ready projects to get people back to employment and work. That's our single biggest problem at the present moment. And looking to the future, one of our key problems is the inability under the current powers of the Scottish Parliament to borrow to capital finance projects like the Fourth Crossing. Even the Calman Commission recognised that. So, you know, the job of fighting recession and promoting recovery is very much part and parcel of the economic powers that the Parliament has, hence the importance of the constitutional question.
Alex Salmond, thank you very much. Let's turn to our guest today. It's an interesting dynamic, this, because it would be great for Alex Salmond to have a Conservative government. You know, now hardly any Scottish Tory MPs. He can say, look, what do these toffs know about our life here? But it would be pretty awful for David Cameron to have to deal with, you know, an agent provocateur north of the border.
Well, he's got that, whether he likes it or not. It's interesting, isn't it? The Conservative Party believes more in the United Kingdom than any other political party, and yet it has the least representation. On the other hand, he can never get a majority for independence. So it's a very interesting conundrum. And I'm not quite sure where it ends, other than that there's a great big dilemma.
Is this referendum going to happen ever?
I imagine so eventually. Whether it'll be a straightforward question or a straightforward referendum, I doubt. I mean, as he said, it's the wonderful thing about referenda, they're non-binding. I mean, what is the point of it?
There's talk in the Tory High Command that, with the situation that Anita mentions, that the Conservatives get into power, they've got almost no seats in Scotland, so they don't have a mandate there. They'll have a guerrilla campaign by Alex Salmond saying, we didn't elect you, and all the rest of it. So let the Conservatives call a referendum, a straight one, on independence, not on giving us a mandate to go and negotiate like Alex Salmond. Straight question in Scotland, do you want to be independent or not? Do you think that's a gamble worth taking?
I think it's a very interesting idea, Andrew. I shall put it to him next time I see him.
No, they're thinking about it already.
Well, good. In that case, I'll encourage them to think about it.
There you go.